Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Book Girls Big Read. And we have a guest in the studio this morning, and our guest is Glenn Ponka. Hi, Glenn.
Hello.
Yeah, and lovely spring day, summer day, I guess. Yeah, summer happened, eh? I was out in the
Yeah,
floods. I don't know. I kind of missed that.
summer came a little bit late. Yeah,
But it is here, and it's hot. It is hot. I've been doing some gardening, and man, oh man, is it hot! And the bugs are out.
they are. Yeah, yeah. We were out in the country at my parents there, and the bugs were getting at us a bit.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a polka dot book girl. I've got a lot of black fly mites all over me. Anyways, we are going to talk today about parenting and the relationship between parenting and writing. And
Sure.
Glenn is going to read a piece called Flight Time that references that topic, and then we're going to chat a little bit about that.
Yep.
So I'm going to put on a couple tunes that address parenting in various forms. And this is Boz Scaggs with Fly Like a Bird, which is one of my favorite all-time tunes. And one of my other favorite all-time tunes, Mark Knopfler with Cannibals. And this is about the relationship of parents and children and music and all kinds of good stuff. So let's hear Boz Scaggs and Fly Like a Bird. Well, there you go. That was Mark Knopfler and Cannibals. A fabulous song. Fabulous. Mark Knopfler, what a guy. So here's another guy, Glenn Ponka. Glenn's going to read for us from his story, Flight Time. Now, Glenn, is this a novel or a short story? Or?
I think it's just a short story. It was based on a photo story that we did with the Guild a few years ago.
Okay.
We had a picture of a girl holding a blood orange, and we
Okay.
all had to draw a picture on that.
Okay.
Or a story based on
Okay,
it.
after the story, maybe we'll talk a little bit about those photo stories.
Sure.
But let's just hear you read for a bit.
I'll get it. Flight time. 4-year-old Sally ran into the backyard and up to the tree, stopping and staring at the strange objects in its branches. They were round and red and orange. She had never seen a tree like this. The day had been filled with new experiences, a plane ride from snowy winter to sunny summer, a dinner from small boxes on the flight, and then getting changed in the airplane bathroom. Her father had removed the snowsuit and boots and dressed Sally in a blue and white sundress and white and wide-brimmed sun hat. "Oranges," Sally said with glee. "Oranges in a tree? How can that be?" "Not just oranges," Seesaw said. "No?" Sally looked to Seesaw, the small knitted brown cat doll that Sally always carried in the crook of her right arm. Seesaw wore a lavender dress, permanently, as it was knitted to be part of her. "No," Seesaw confirmed. "Magic oranges." "Oh," Sally said, and she picked up the wind-fallen, red-tinted orange from the grass. "What do they do?" "They can make you fly," Seesaw exclaimed. "Like you can fly?" "Yes." Sally took this as the honest truth, as Seesaw was a great flyer. Her magic lavender dress made her fly all around Sally's room at bedtime, swooping and buzzing past Sally's nose, and sometimes comically crashing. Seesaw was a bit of a show-off. "Can I fly like Mummy?" Sally asked. "Just like Mummy," Seesaw assured. "How does it work? Do I eat it?" "No, just hold it with both hands," Seesaw said. Sally pursed her lips and held the blood orange close to inspect it. "Is this a good one?" "It's ripe. It should be good for flying," Seesaw confirmed. "Will I crash?" Sally asked. "Never," Seesaw said. "I will always keep you safe." "Good," Sally said. Sally hugged the orange with one arm and tucked Seesaw down the front of her sundress. "Ready?" Sally asked. "Ready," Seesaw said. Sally held the orange with both hands, bent her knees, looked up to the clear sky, and jumped. Daniel lugged the last of his and Sally's luggage into the entryway and collapsed on the stairs, sweating, exhausted, and stressed. Too much Florida heat. "Sorry I was late picking you up, son," Martin said, adjusting his thick glasses. Daniel's father was in his late 60s and drove very slowly. "That's okay," Daniel said. "I'm just glad to be here." "Where'd Sally go?" Martin asked. "She was jumping around the backyard with an orange," Daniel said. "She found the orange tree. I knew she'd like it," Martin smiled. The cool air made Daniel's skin tingle. He felt comfortable, but still sweaty. There was a lot more to do and stress over, but at least they were here. Next was settling in, enrolling Sally in a good school, and finding a house nearby. "Want a beer?" Martin asked. Daniel followed Martin into the kitchen, looking out the windows for Sally. The yard was fenced in, but he'd heard stories of people getting snapped up by crocodiles, even in a golf course retirement community like Vista Grove. Martin grabbed 2 beers from the fridge. Daniel pressed the cold can to his forehead. He was still hot. He and his father drank in silence, watching Sally in the yard. There was a knock and the front door opened. An elderly woman came in smiling. "I heard you two were arriving this evening," she said. "Hello, Bernice," Daniel said, and stood for a hug. Martin already had a cap on. "Make yourself at home, son. We'll be back late. Give Sally a kiss at bedtime." "Have fun, you two crazy kids," Daniel said. "I'll be by tomorrow with a present for Sally," Bernice said. Then they were off to the dog track. Martin and Bernice went to bet on the races at least 3 times a week. They had been a couple for years, and Daniel was glad his father had someone. "I suppose I'll have to find someone too," Daniel thought, drinking his beer. "I can't imagine dating anyone. Of course, I never imagined I'd be a retired widower who moved to Tampa at age 36. 3 years since Helen had died. The 3 years since Helen had died had sped fast. Along the way, Sally had grown and they had grieved. Reporters interviewed Daniel, even though he hadn't been on board Helen's plane when the engines lost power and she piloted it down into a field. He hadn't been there when the cockpit had been crushed and she and her flight crew had died, saving over 200 strangers. He talked about Helen piloting jets in the Air Force, about her selfless nature and her grace under pressure, about how happy she had been when Sally had been born. And he avoided listening to the black box recordings of her steady voice on the news, the last words of Captain Helen Thomas, hero of Flight 714. Survivors sent cards and letters, envelopes of money, job offers and gifts. They visited in tears, telling them how thankful they were for what Helen had done and how tragic it was that she had died. A whistleblower later told tales of faulty repairs and substandard replacement parts. The airline responded with accusations of pilot error and reports on Helen's involvement with hazing new recruits in the armed forces. Helen's life and death were dissected for public consumption. Daniel quit his job. He moved twice, living off Helen's considerable but not endless life insurance policy. A year passed before the airline settled the class action lawsuit, but the money did not replace a mother. Daniel finished his beer and grabbed another from the fridge. I never used to drink, he thought, feeling his stomach where the added weight had settled. He looked out in the backyard and didn't see Sally. He didn't hear her either. He thought about crocodiles as he jumped up and ran out the back door. No Sally. No crocodiles either. The yard was fenced, at least 5 feet high. Panic rose in his chest. He heard the gate latch jiggling. He ran past the orange tree and along the stone path to open the back gate. He found Sally cradling Seesaw in the crook of her arm, her blonde hair a wind-blown mess. Sally, Daniel sighed, scooped her up, his panic receding. How did you get into the lane? I love you, Daddy, she said, and pecked his cheek, and then wiggled to be let down. She grabbed an orange off the lawn, running, jumping, ducking, her fingers clinging to the orange. She had a bloody knee, but wasn't concerned about it. Daniel looked at the gate. The latch was too high for Sally to reach. How did you get into the lane? Was the gate open? What happened to your knee? We were flying, Daddy, Sally exclaimed. Flying like Mummy. Seesaw and me. Were you? We swooped up over the fence and into the sky. Is Seesaw teaching you to fly? Daniel asked. Yeah, Sally said. It's the oranges. Seesaw says they're magic. We flew around Grandpa's house, but then my hand slipped and we fell. You fell? Is that when you scraped your knee? Yeah, on the shingles on the neighbor's roof. It doesn't hurt. Daniel laughed. Okay, and then you just flew down to the laneway? No, Sally sighed at her father's silly question. The orange lost its magic, so we climbed down. How? Easy, Sally shrugged. The roof is sloped down by the garage. I hopped into the yard and I ran to the gate. Yeah, okay, Daniel said, checking the latch again to make sure it was shut. Time for bed. No, Sally zoomed off across the yard, an orange in her hands. Hey, Daniel laughed, his arms up in the air, his fingers arched into claws. Bedtime monster! Eee! Sally shrieked, dropping the orange, and Daniel chased her around the yard under the amber evening sky. They unpacked pajamas and books and lay together in bed to read. Then Daniel tucked Sally in under the covers with Seesaw and kissed her good night. I love you, Daddy. I love you, silly Sally. You're silly, Daddy. Good night. Daniel closed the door and went downstairs quietly. He stood in the kitchen and looked out the window. What an imagination, he thought, wishing that mother and daughter had been able to know each other. I love flying, Sally whispered. Magic oranges are the best, Seesaw confirmed, as she flew around the room. She swooped into Sally's embrace, and they snuggled to sleep. The evening wind caught the brim of Sally's sun hat, flipping it over and along the neighbor's roof and past the orange resting in the eaves trough, and into the air where it soared briefly and landed in the blood orange tree.
Wow, you took me by surprise there. Yeah. So was this a recently written story, Glenn, or did you write this some time ago?
I wrote this a couple years ago. Every year we have a photo for the Writers Guild, and the Guild is a group of 12 of us. And in the summer, we each everybody gets the same photo or a pair of photos, and we use that as inspiration. Sometimes very focused inspiration, sometimes barely tangentially related to the story.
Yeah.
And this one had a girl carrying an orange, so or just basically it was a picture of the orange and a girl's hands holding it. And you could see she had a sundress, and it was summer, and that was it. And so a variety of different stories came from this. I think you're familiar with Jack's, which is
Amethyst,
a very different type of tale,
by
necessarily.
Far. Yeah.
And so I started with that. I kind of wanted to tell a little bit of a magical story with it, but then it slowly turned into this much more weighty end of it for Daniel's half of the story, and Sally's is, imagination, but or is it? I don't know. I like to.
It's funny how that happens, how the story comes to life. It starts somewhere and it may end up somewhere completely different.
That's part of the fun of it. Yeah, you can plan it out a lot, but I've even found when I do that, sometimes some random idea takes you in a new direction that turns out to be a little bit more creative or different or interesting, and then you can save that other idea for later, and who knows where it'll go.
No, I know myself, when I write, I just tend to freeform. I just write everything that comes to my mind. I don't I don't worry about spelling. I don't worry about grammar. And I'll write 7,000 pages and then, edit, 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 edit. Are you an editor or are you?
I write really long the first time. Everything, because I'm telling myself the story. I'm putting in all these details. Even I was reading this over to bring it the last couple of days because I hadn't looked at it in a year or so. And I found I took out a bit about this or that I'm like, well, this didn't fit with the story. There were extra details about Martin or what have you. But another trick, if I'm stuck to get started, I'll sit at the word processor and I'll turn off the monitor so I can't edit. I can only just type. So then I type whatever ideas I've got, and then if I'm stuck or I think I made a mistake, I just hit return twice, and then later I get this kind of gobbledygook of words and sentences. But you filter through it, and then you find, oh, well, that's kind of a neat idea, and you kind of get your brain going.
Do you like the editing process?
Yeah, it's a bit of a different process. I find it, but I do like it. I do like to go through because then it's almost like, the creation half is kind of done. And now I can go back and I can fine tune this, or I notice where I use the same word 3 times in 2 paragraphs, and you hunt down all these little things that you, and less is always more is the way to do it. Yeah.
And you, of course, use the Guild.
Yes.
Which, for the few people who haven't heard us talk about the Guild, is a group of writers that edit each other's work, and very, very valuable feedback, of course. You don't always take all of it to heart, but there's always good comments, and usually there's some consistency, so you know what to work on.
You get a good idea, and the biggest thing they can provide is perspective. Even like I said, looking at the story after a year or so since I looked at it, it was easy for me to find a couple things that kind of like spurs that pointed out that weren't, that I needed to smooth off a little bit.
Yeah.
And when you bring it to a bunch of people that haven't read it and haven't been thinking about it for the last month or two or week or two or whatever, they see all those things much clearer and quicker.
Yeah, and it's easy to find problems, and also it's easy to find the strengths in the story by listening to others. Now, are you? I know some of us have difficulty finishing. It's never really finished. Do you? What are you like? Are you satisfied with it, or do you keep working year after year? Or
it's I can, depending on. I think my thing is I get another idea, and then if I get an ending point or some sort of ending, I can set it aside, and then I switch gears and I'll think about something entirely different. But yeah, art is never finished, only abandoned. Isn't that Da Vinci? I can't remember who said that.
I don't know, but yeah,
but
I know in my world, it's the same with drawing. I'm a visual artist, and man, oh man, if I had my way, everything would just be black by the end. The white sheet would be black.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to know. I draw a lot myself, especially now with my daughter is a big drawer, and my son likes to make these maps and everything. So I'm constantly drawing things for them and with them. And it's brought me back to what I used to do a lot when I was a kid. And I've been buying all these nice markers and good pencils and experimenting with different colors and stuff.
Well, of course, you need good tools.
Yeah, I got to draw something with red, and woo. And so I'll find, I'll be like, well, I can, I was trying to draw 100 hands, like just to practice drawing hands. And I've drawn a bunch, and I've goofed off for a while, but yeah, you hit a certain point. I'm like, okay, I don't need to add any more hairs on the knuckle or wrinkles here. It looks like a hand. I can relax.
Yeah. I just need to mention, you are listening to Book Girls Big Read on CILU Radio 102.7 FM, and we're visiting with Glenn Ponka today. And Glenn and I were talking before we started the show. Glenn, you have 2 children? Yeah.
Ben, who's 7, and Vivian, who's 5.
Okay, and my oldest child is 43, so I'm a mother, and I have grandchildren and spend a lot of time with them, and of course, tell them stories and draw with them, and which is just a blast. It's a lovely, lovely activity, and we were discussing how much fun it is, and how brilliant our children are, and our grandchildren are.
Oh yeah, it's a big thing, and thinking about writing too. I mean they give you a different perspective going. I mean, I've written stories. I had a story, Trivet Nurky, I don't remember, about these kids that find out about. But well, Trivet was an odd name, so I figured I'd make a kid named Trivet. And basically they read about William Tell in school, and they say, well, let's try this with rocks, and then they throw rocks at each other and hit each other in the head.
Yes, I remember this.
Yeah,
now.
and I wrote that years ago before I had kids, and now thinking about it again, it's you have to embrace the childish, not childish in a bad way, but that sense of wonder about everything, which is very good. It helps you as a writer because they observe everything.
Oh,
they're always looking,
and they report on everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, and like there's a story I heard about a supermarket security guard, and he sits up high in that thing and watches everyone in the supermarket. And he says it's only the children that see him. They all look up and wave at him because everyone else is trained to look at the shelves and at head height, right?
Yeah.
And the kids are like, well, I'm going to look at the lights up there, and I'm going to look. Oh, look, there's a man, and they wave.
The kids and the shoplifters.
Yeah. Well, the shoplifters are smart. Maybe keep an eye out too. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to put on a tune that Glenn has brought in, and hopefully we got the right one here, Glenn. It's unmarked.
Unmarked on the CD.
Be careful, folks. And this is Loudon Wainwright III, and it's called Daughter.
Yeah.
We hope.
LU Radio is supported in part by the student body of Lakehead University, our listeners, and our sponsors. At this time, we would like to thank the following sponsors for the continuous support of LU Radio.
Our Fund Drive 2013 sponsors. Dr. Kidd Family Dentistry, proud to offer a friendly and relaxed environment for all your dental needs. Students and everyone else in the family are welcome. Nitrous oxide is available for those with dental anxiety as well. Entertain yourself during your appointment with TV, or better yet, bring a DVD. Located at 1314 Victoria Avenue East, call 623-2212 to book an appointment. Dr. Kidd Family Dentistry, one smile at a time. And Dave Herringer, looking for posters, logos, or advertising for the web or print, or maybe even some 3D modeling. Visit Dave Herringer, graphic designer and 3D modeler, on his Facebook page or at www.daveherringer.com.
And you are listening to Book Girls Big Read on CILU Radio 102.7 FM. We have a guest today, Glenn Ponka. Glenn just read from his short story, Flight Time, and we are discussing parenting. And we'll try not to dote on our own children and grandchildren, in my case, but it's quite a balancing act, having time to be a parent and have your family life and share with your wife or your husband or partner, and parents and
then
jobs and
then write
and
be artistic outside of that. Yeah, you got to carve time out of granite to kind of do that. Or
I know when my children were young, I'm a writer, but a visual artist first, and I basically had 10 years where I really couldn't draw because it's not the kind of thing I could do for 10 minutes. I don't doodle. I draw, and I need probably at least 2 to 4 hours concentrated work. The writing, you can make notes and that, but the same thing. Once you get going, you need a couple hours.
I always find myself getting captured into it. I think I'll just do this little bit of editing, or I'll get this idea down. And then Tracy's yelling, "It's supper time." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
I don't need to eat.
I need to get to the end of this thought, and then I'm scribbling things down. But outside of that, I find I'm getting good at thinking about it. Like I think about a story or an idea, when you have time to yourself, like when you're lying in bed, falling asleep.
Trying to fall asleep.
I'm like, I end up thinking about a story or trying to work out what the swerve or the different choice will be that will surprise someone or something like that. And I've done this a few times, and especially once I had a deadline at the Guild. I had to get a story out, and I completely didn't realize it, and I think I ended up writing it when I was sick with a cold over like 3 days before sending it off. Yeah. But I'd been thinking about it for about a month. So it was just a matter, I found when I was writing it, I kind of had all the decisions made. I just had to basically get the words down on the page. And that'll work. And then looking for inspiration on things and drawing off of everyday things. I mean, that's a big thing with kids, gives you that different perspective, I think, when you look at things, when you become a parent, you look at them from the parent side instead of the kid side, and you get this new perspective, and it's interesting. I think it's hilarious. I found myself quoting my parents so many times when I'm like,
please,
it's a nice day outside. What are you doing inside? Go outside. Unfortunately, the kids are very good. They're like, oh, okay. And then they run outside and they play on the swing. So that's always good. But yeah, or all these parenting cliches that you've always known as cliches, and suddenly you're using them and you're like, that was just waiting in the back of my head for me to.
Yeah. Well, and it is waiting. I mean, the ideas are waiting too. I've always been blessed with a fairly good memory, but I find that you think you're going to remember things. So if you are new to writing, I would suggest you have a little notebook and carry it with you, because I'm finding now that I'm pretty good at remembering the things, but not as good as I used to be.
No,
and you come up with these epiphanies in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning. You think, and then you're kind of, now, what was that? You remember pieces of it?
Why did that make such inspirational sense?
I found the secret of life last night. What was it?
Or I carried a notebook, a bunch of those little spiral-bound tiny notebooks for years in my back pocket. I'd write things down. And I found, even if I didn't go through and look through them, sometimes I would, and I would find something. But the fact that I wrote it down kind of cemented it in my brain a little bit. Nowadays, I'll between work and home, I'm on a computer either place most of the time. I work on a computer all day, so drawing things. But I'll think of something. So now that everything's kind of interconnected, I can write an email to myself with the idea, or just save it in a folder, and then it'll be there waiting for me when I get home, and I'll be like, okay, that's an idea that I got to stick with, and I'll have this odd email about something that'll be floating in my inbox for a long time until I'm like, I've got to use that idea I had.
I make lists too. I find lists are very. Not only are they kind of a calming technique for whatever, maybe it's my mental illness, but it's a good way to sort of fortify it in your mind, you know. But sometimes I come across something I wrote 20 years ago. And like the little Medusa, what was that? What was I going to do with that? You know?
And I that's the other odd thing, reading stuff that you've written in the past. And I always find I look at it and go, oh, I didn't know how to write. I'm so much better now than I was then. Especially if you go back to the really old, reading stuff from
that you wish you hadn't published. Yes.
That could happen, I suppose. Yeah, where you're like, I'd make a different decision now, or why did I go this way, or even just what you were interested in, right? You write a story,
it changes,
and it's a good way to explore an idea about something, or. I mean, I read a lot of science fiction stuff. I'm reading comic books all the time. So I like the flights of fantasy, something different and interesting that is a bit of a surprise. If I got a ghost story, there's going to be a ghost in it. It isn't going to just be them. They're afraid of the door creaking. Although maybe now I'll have to swerve the other way. And anyway. But I like
Here
to put
he goes, folks. He's writing notes.
I've already got half a novel in my head right now.
Well, Glenn, in the time that I've known you, you always seem kind of a youthful sort of guy. So I can imagine that having the children is almost, although it's a huge responsibility, of course, it's almost freeing in a way, because you can really get into fantasy land now.
I can enjoy all the kids' shows, and I can read. I mean, I read comic books already, but I mean, it's. But now I'm reading all these old comics that I read, Richie Rich and especially these 1960s, 1950s Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge that were written in a time when, I don't know, it's a different set of imagination ideas or something, and how things were wrote. But there's these longer, odd, interesting adventure stories that I read as a kid, and these comics are still kicking around. So now I'm reading them with the kids again, and now they're just reading them on their own. Vivi desperately wants to read. She's almost there. And
Vivian's 5, right?
Vivian's 5, Ben is. I woke up this morning, and as I left, I said, I'm going to go on the radio, and he's like reading an old comic of mine. Yeah, whatever, Dad. Go.
See you later.
See you later. I said, okay, good.
Big deal.
I got you reading. Success.
And
then he's making up stories too. We went to Vanderwees last winter, and they have the fireworks, right? Yeah. And this time of year, they want to go, they're interested in the fireworks, but it doesn't get dark until so late. The kids are asleep before the fireworks. So we've gone to see the fireworks, and they're at like 6 o'clock. So he drew a picture of the fireworks, and everyone going, ooh, ah, and then he added about 3 or 4 more pages so that it was all the people giving out, and the fireworks going up and exploding. So, he's building these stories and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. You got to capture the interest in the entire world that get older, you become an adult, you're jaded about things, and the kids are fascinated with everything. So.
Well, some of us don't grow up, so.
Well, that's the trick.
I spent last night with my 4-year-old granddaughter, and there, I got to just mention this for folks. I watch a lot of Treehouse with my granddaughter, and there is a show that is so funny. It's called Peppa Pig. And it comes from Britain. It's not on very often. I think it's on Saturday mornings, but we have, made copies of it. and it's British, and the drawings are atrocious. They're not good at all. But it is so funny on both the child and adult level that my granddaughter and I just roll laughing at Peppa Pig. So check it out, folks. It's a winner.
Well, as long as something's well written, I find. I mean, a lot of the stuff will be written, and it's so, I don't know, not very creative. It could be much more interesting. But you can write something intelligent, and the children are going to capture it the same way. They may not get the exact same level, but they will appreciate a well-written, thought-out story. And then, of course, they always ask me to make up stories. I'm getting them to bed, and I have to tell stories about this little fellow called Peter Pepper. And at one point, he was a pepper. He was actually there was a pepper, and he'd run and said, "You can't catch me, you can't catch me." And he'd run, and the pepper farmer would be chasing him, and all kinds of stuff. Farmer? The actual, I guess there was, all the peppers. He'd jump out of the field. And then he became a little house troll, and he's like a little, kind of like a Smurf, 3 apples tall kind of creature.
Well, isn't that what happens to peppers?
Well, yeah.
I can just see it. I want to draw it now, Glenn. You need an illustrator?
Oh, I've got some pictures. I'll send you something. He's all blue, oddly enough, but he's got red hair.
Oh, that famous blue pepper.
Yeah, well, that's a
Peter the blue pepper.
Yeah.
That is terrific. Well, it is an interesting thing when you have young people around you, and I teach as well, which is terrific. Even though I'm retired, I just love those little minds. So I like to go out, and I go out as an art expert and work with them. And it's fabulous because not only are you encouraging them and you're teaching them, and you're opening up a world for yourself. And as a creative person, whatever your art form is, there's nothing better than being around kids because they are just so free in their creativity.
That is the big thing, yeah.
And if you're able to, lose your inhibitions a little bit, man, it's fun. So I think if you got writer's block, spend an hour with some kids because
they'll give you a bunch of ideas.
They'll give you ideas, and then what you do with it's up to you.
Well, even the Peter Pepper thing, I make up these stories, and he always rolls down the hill and he falls in the water, and everyone laughs at it. It's the silly thing, and he has to wear an odd hat, and the hat has got a rock in it or something, and he goes flying. So it's all this slapstick silliness. But I've written so it's inspired me to write. I've never really written children's stories before, but now I'm I'm telling these stories off the top of my head, and it's a good mental exercise because I've got to come up with something different all the time. And so then I've taken it and I've kind of written a bit of a more story, maybe an older children's story, but more of a family and where Peter Pepper is, and he lives with his aunt, and maybe she's a witch, and all these other odd things. And there's cats that walk around and they drive tractors. It's a hit. I can tell already. I love it.
I can't wait till it comes out.
I just got to keep writing it.
Yeah.
But I'll get a point, and I'll be like. And I'll be thinking about the story, of course, in the back of my head, percolating away. And I'll ask the kids, I'll say, well, should this happen or that happen? And they'll say, this should happen. I'll be like, I didn't think of that. And then, okay, well, I'll try to shoehorn that in. And it gets in there a little bit somehow, and it might send you in a different direction where you get a different idea about something. And it's all finding different ideas and collecting stories about stuff.
Yeah, you are listening to Book Girls Big Read on CILU Radio 102.7 FM. I know that... Glenn, and our guest is Glenn Ponka, if you've tuned in late, and we're talking about children and writing and parenting and all that. I know that I tell a lot of stories to my grandchildren, and I did to my children. At one point, I was actually telling Lord of the Rings to my son when he was about 3. Luckily, I have a fairly good memory, but that is a little bit ponderous. And then I started to create my own story from it. But I know with my granddaughter, who is 4, I make her the central character. Yeah. And I'm ad-libbing. We read. Bedtime routine is we read. We sing a little. And now that she's 4, she knows that Nana cannot sing on tune. So she's correcting me now. And then we tell stories, and at one time I was telling all the stories.
Yeah.
But now she wants to tell stories, and of course she is the central character, and I'm kind of the backup character, and Mummy and her brother and the cats and on and on, and it's really
it's right
fun.
what you know.
Yeah, it's really fun when they start creating the stories.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's learning how to create. And it's the easiest thing to create is to tell an odd, intricate lie that is writing, that make things up that are a little different. And even, like, I was talking to the kids last night, and they were worried they'd watched a video and that was a little bit scary. And I was saying, well, there was scary stuff in the video that made you a little bit, spooked. A monkey jumped out and it was mean or whatever. I said, but then there was the funny stuff, and I said, well, you can always focus on the scary things if you want, but if you can balance it out and pick something else that's more entertaining for yourself.
We need to have a therapy session. I'm not good at filtering out the scary stuff. As a writer, there is pleasure in sharing. I mean, I think most of us would write anyways, even if we're still in the closet and nobody knows that we are writers, because it is almost a compulsion for us.
I'll spend 20 minutes writing an email that shouldn't be take that long, right? I'll think about it, I'll write it, I'll now, maybe I should add some more to this.
Yeah.
But it's that compulsion to tell, and that's why I'm blathering on. But I can't express it and just, I want to make sure people understand completely my idea or my story.
Yes.
Like I got to bring in this perspective and this perspective, and I said, and then this was happening as well, and so I end up in these long rambling
editing your
things,
emails. I remember years ago someone wrote a bio about Pierre Trudeau, and one of the comments they made was Pierre edited his memos.
Yeah.
As if this was some very odd thing. And I thought, doesn't everyone? I mean, obviously, he was a guy that cared about quality.
Yeah.
And I know not everyone does this, but I think writers do. Even maybe the grocery list, I've done it twice.
Yeah.
We have a need to articulate and to say things in the best way.
Yeah.
And separating those little everyday activities doesn't really work for us.
No, it's kind of there all the time. And I think, I'm not a poet, but I know that's that other step further where you're well, maybe I don't know. But I mean, you're picking the perfect 5 words or 6 words. I'll pick the perfect 300 words maybe, and then I'll put another 100 around them just to
I have great opening lines, and then after that,
But it's that taking something creative and then kind of crystallizing it so that you can present it correctly or to show it. But you got to kind of have the wild creative half, and then now I have to work at it to make sure it turns out how you want it. Even with drawing with that, I was we had an art book, and it just had a page, and it said, and had a few triangles in the corner, and it was a really neat book, and it said just keep filling the page with triangles.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, why would you do that? I said, well, think about it. If you came into a room and there was a gigantic thing and there was nothing but odd, different shaped triangles, and it covered like 8 square feet, you'd be like, well, even though you had to work at that, there's something there.
I think that's a fabulous idea. I may be doing that. Me with my little intricate. They'll be all teeny tiny triangles. While we're talking about this, I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist in my art, not necessarily in my life. But I had when my daughter was in grade 1, she did a project for the science fair. We were talking about science or winning prizes earlier. And my daughter, I draw, and I draw very exacting, and I used to be able to print like a typewriter.
Yeah.
So this is how I taught my daughter. And her printing was so perfect. Yeah. That when she went in the science fair with this wonderful project about turtles, the judges refused to believe that she did it. They thought I did it, which was not true. So I learned a little bit about perfectionism and passing that on to your children, because I actually hampered her at pushing her to this level of excellence. And the next child, I didn't do that. Her handwriting is terrible.
Oh, my handwriting. The only reason my handwriting has gotten better from when I was a kid, my handwriting was bad when I was a kid because I was bad at spelling. And so if I couldn't spell it, I would just mush it together, right? And so at some point, and as far as a writing thing as well, I was thinking, I mean, my handwriting has improved because I've been writing. I've got a journal and I kind of write down. And even though a lot of days it's a pretty boring list of we did this, I went to work, we did that, the kids did this or whatever. But every day I've been writing a page. So I think I'm at.
So like a journal?
Yeah, like a journal. Yeah, so I'm at about 8,700 pages now. I'm almost there. I was looking last night. I'm like, how many pages into this? And it's interesting too because you keep track of ideas and you're observing things. You go back and you look back like 3 years at what did I do 3 years ago? And it's amazing what the memory will pull back from what you've got there. That you read the summary of what you did, even though it is, not every day is amazing. The other interesting thing is you pick up stuff where you're like, you remember things separately. Like we went on this trip to Toronto and it was so-and-so's wedding and then this happened. But then when you read, you find they're all layered amongst themselves, all mixed together. But your brain takes them apart and separates them. And that's kind of something when you're writing, you can take back and you can shoehorn these 3 or 4 things together at the same time and have your character going in 5 different directions because that is how life kind of goes. You observe these things, and
that's a great tool. Whether you're doing memoir or not. I mean, your ideas are flowing to do creative writing, to do fantasy or whatever.
And you get in the habit of summing everything up at the end of the day too.
Yeah.
And so then you do remember something if you want to lock that away, or you can write it off to the side and keep track of ideas.
It's good therapy.
Yeah,
it is very good therapy, and also it is constructive. It's a constructive exercise of knowing yourself, which is never bad. Yeah, no, and that goes a big way to figuring out. And if you know who you are, and even if you know what your strengths are as a writer. Yeah, I know there's other writers that weave in wonderful layers of stuff, and I try to put a couple layers in maybe. But I'm very plot oriented. I want them to go here to do this, and then I want this surprise, and then they get in a kerfuffle, or something. And it, you kind of so that's how I'm driven. And my friend Nancy Bjorgo, she writes very much about a scene and an image, and she's a visual artist too. So that's part of it as well. Good visual artist. And so I'm always, we kind of go back and forth that she'll write something completely different than I will, and then we both find ourselves as odd, unique readers of each other's stuff. That it's a different perspective for sure. We don't have a whole lot of time, but let's talk about that sharing. Now you are in a couple groups, and you've been in these groups a long time, and in fact you're the founder of Luna, I think, or one of the founding members. Yeah, I think so, yeah. So what is Luna? Luna is an acronym for Lakehead Unfinished Novels Anonymous, kind of like a support group. And you have to confess? You have to come and say, hi, I'm Glenn, I'm writing a novel. And then there's a few of us, and basically, I was in the guild for many years, and the idea of the guild, you're always kind of bringing a chapter, and then a few months go by and you bring another chapter. And I write very long. Every story I write is a novel. I know eventually I'm going to, when I have all the time in the world, apparently, I'm going to write all these novels. But, and so I had an idea, and a few of the writers, we got together, and we said, well, let's have it more, instead of a novel's more of a marathon as opposed to a short story is kind of a sprint. You can get an idea for a short story, write it, sum it up, and kind of finish it. But a novel is a much longer process. You've got to mete out your information at a much slower pace. You can't reveal everything in the first chapter, and also, I wrote this one novel for years, I don't know how many years ago, and no one read it but me. And I remember thinking I would have liked to had somebody to bounce it off as I went through it. Don't even tell me how they want it to go, but just to give me feedback. I was carving this odd path through the woods, kind of writing this story, and then I don't know if anybody wants to go down the path. But that was it. Yeah. So we started this Luna group, and every month we get together and someone brings a chapter of something they've written, and then we all just kind of give feedback on it, and then
And so in some ways it's good because you kind of get a concentrated information on that particular chapter. But then again, just like anything, you miss things, and you forget a character because he hasn't been in 3 chapters, but it's been 4 months since you read the last chapter, so you forget. So, but it's a good process to encourage people along. Like all the Guild and Luna is all about encouraging someone to keep going and keep writing and keep figuring out the next part of the story, and to give that perspective, to find that different angle to something that they got a bit of a blind spot for because you've been writing it, you've been thinking about it. It's hard to break your head out of that and see it from a different angle. Right? So,
yeah, it's very important to get another perspective. And I would suggest it's not a family member or your partner or someone where it's going to get personal. Yeah, it's almost the more removed from you, it's almost the better. Although through those groups like the Guild, you do become friends with people, and you do become professional where you're not taking comments personally. That's part of being a writer. You've got to develop that skill for sure.
You got to get the thick skin to know. And like it also, I say, I know myself. I write. I'll catch myself. I know I'll write something very long, and I'll explain things very, very fully when I don't need to.
Yeah. A little over-wordy.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazingly.
Well, you know what, Glenn? It's almost time to say happy trails. So great stuff. I've been wanting to have you in on the show for a long time. And Glenn, right now, you're still the president of the Writers Guild?
I'm president of the Guild, and we've got Luna going too,
and you are involved with the Blue Pencil?
Oh, that's it.
Let's just talk about that. We got about a minute to talk about that.
Yeah.
What is Blue Pencil?
Well, Blue Pencil was an idea I had. I said, is to give that. The best feedback is honest, helpful feedback. And like you were saying, if you give it to your friend who maybe isn't a novel reader or doesn't, or is just your friend, will read it and they'll give the basic feedback of, that's nice, I liked it. And that is great.
Yeah,
it's a little encouraging.
Oh, that's good.
That's good. That's nice. But it does. It's like, well, where are the clunky sentences? Where's the the run-on sentences, or the imagery that doesn't work, or the plot that slows down? You've got too much summary and backstory in this part. So we started Blue Pencil through the Northwest Ontario Writers Workshop there, and basically allows someone to give that. Thunder Bay's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. So if you this way, you can get honest feedback, and so the writers and the reviewers don't know each other. The writers send me a story, and then I send it off to a writer. The writer reviews it, and then I send it back to them, and then they get complete, honest, good feedback.
And no one knows.
And no one knows anybody.
Yeah.
And so that you don't have to feel offended or angry. But to be honest, it's not like they're trashing the stories anyway.
No, of course not.
The more you can write on a story, it's probably the more because if you read a story and it's somebody hasn't, made a few different, need some help, right? You want to help them. You want to go, okay, look, you've got to trim this down, and it's not I don't pick anybody that would be like, this is garbage, and put a big X through it and learn to draw. Just scribble across it and throw your typewriter out. That's not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
You want to nurture them along, and it's hard to find that when you're a starting writer, to find somebody that can give you that interesting perspective. The only other advice I heard about that is Stephen King said, give it to like 5 or 10 people,
Yeah.
Then sit down with each of them individually and listen to what all they got to say. Yeah. And if they don't agree on anything, don't change anything. But if they all agree that this thing is funny, then that's good. If they all agree that this is clunky and bad, then that's good. But if they don't agree on something else, then it's your decision whether you want to keep it or not, because it doesn't resonate with everyone takes everything differently. Yeah?
You've always got to remember, you as the writer, everything's in your head. So if you're not, a stranger doesn't know what's in your head. It's based on the story alone.
You'll write a story and you're imagining your own living room for the setting.
He doesn't care who you are in real life. He's reading a story.
Yeah.
And that's the point you always need to get to. So my point is saying goodbye, because I got like 15 seconds.
Oh, dear.
So thank you, Glenn.
Well, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
We could talk about children forever. Thank you very much.
Hours.
So coming up, What's Up in Thunder Bay, and then Wood Songs. Fabulous show. Tune in. Thank you for listening.